The Cincinnati Bengals stated what? They traded for Joe Flacco? Okay, sure, he's better than Jake Browning, but only a little.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It was pretty shocking when the news came out yesterday afternoon that the Cincinnati Bengals had traded for Joe Flacco. And I suppose that part of the news was not so shocking. What was genuinely a shock to me was that they expect Joe Flacco to go out and start this Sunday against the Green Bay Packers. Now, there are a lot of reasons why I think that's true. And we are lucky here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I have Spencer German from Locked On Browns coming on the show to tell me what he thinks Joe Flacco has left, why it might be different in Cincinnati and why it might not be. And then my pal James Rapien from Locked On Bengals is going to come on a little bit early, and we're going to talk about this deal. So this is surprising, but it's not because Joe Flacco has played Green Bay already. I don't have to tell you that. I have already seen all of the consternation that it has wrought, this trade. Oh, Joe Flacco, he's coming to beat Green Bay again. You guys, Joe Flacco has been the worst preferred starter in the NFL this season. The worst. He was just benched for a rookie mid-round pick who had to make his debut against Brian Flores in London. Like, Joe Flacco is in Cleveland precisely to be a competent player in a situation like that. But he's been so bad that became untenable. He was the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns when the Browns beat the Packers. That is true. But it is one of the all-time illustrations of why quarterback wins is not a thing. In that game, 21 of 36 for 142 yards. That's not even 4 yards an attempt. That's terrible. He had a 58 completion percentage in that game, 58.3%. Congratulations to him. Threw a pick, no touchdowns. Had a long of 17, a quarterback rating of 55. He stunk. And part of it was he was under siege. He was bad. The one touchdown the Browns scored in that game of the 13 points was an interception returned to the 4-yard line, and then a field goal where they could not get the ball close to the end zone after ripping off a chunk run. He completed one pass that was consequential in that game, and it was enough to win because the Packers special team stunk and because Matthew Golden couldn't stay in bounds. Joe Flacco is not scary. Joe Flacco is bad. Let me just read you his last 3 starts, okay? Against the Lions, 16 of 34 for 184 yards. That's not even a 50% completion percentage. 2 interceptions. I mentioned the Green Bay one, and then against the Ravens, 25 of 45 attempt for 199 yards. Had a touchdown and a pick in that game, averaged 4.4 yards an attempt. But here's why this really doesn't matter. And I say that understanding that I'm going to bring you, 20 more minutes of content about this very thing. because it's crazy. This is crazy. It's hard to remember a situation like this. The Packers, back in 2016, Sam Bradford got traded to the Vikings, and the Packers played the Vikings in week 2. That was 2 full weeks and change after that trade. Joe Flacco got traded on Tuesday, is probably not going to get a real practice with the Cincinnati Bengals before they have to travel to Green Bay. That's crazy. And he's going to play and start, apparently. It's crazy. But here's why I don't think this changes much. The one start that Joe Flacco had where he was very productive was way back in week 1. Do you know who they played in week 1? The Cincinnati Bengals. That's how bad this defense is. So let's just, for comparison's sake, had not in any other game passed for more than 200 yards, Joe Flacco. Against the Bengals, he threw for 290. Had not completed over 59% of his passes. Against the Bengals, he completed 69% of his passes. Did not average over 5.5 yards per attempt in any other game. Against the Bengals, he averaged 6.4 yards per attempt. Did not have a passer rating over 65 in any other game. Had a passer rating of 75, and that's only because 2 interceptions caromed off receivers' hands in that football game. They really should have won that game. The Bengals defense stinks. It stinks. So everything we said yesterday about Jake Browning, and he's bad, and yes, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are awesome, but a bad quarterback could not unlock them all season. And then before that, a good quarterback couldn't unlock them because remember, they could not score against the Browns in week 1 with Joe Burrow either. And they could not score against the Jaguars with Joe Burrow until Joe Burrow got hurt. And then they scored with Jake Browning. A reminder, Joe Flacco got benched for Dylan Gabriel. If this is just going to be stand behind a bad offensive line and try and throw the ball down the field, that might work a couple of times. But it's also going to go to Xavier McKinney or an Evan Williams a couple times. Or Micah Parsons is going to hit him from behind and knock the ball out a couple of times. He got benched because he's old, can't move, can't do any of the play action stuff in terms of rolling out that other quarterbacks can do, cannot evade pressure. He's a statue back there. And behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league, that seems like a bad recipe. And guess what? The defense is not going to save you. This is not a game. The Cleveland Browns won that game with their defense. The Bengals cannot do that. And the plan for Joe Flacco is going to be, well, a thing that he was supposed to do this year. Cedric Tillman is a deep ball receiver. Jerry Jeudy, they paid. He's a nice player. They have some receivers over there. David Njoku and Harold Fannin are nice tight ends. And the offense stunk. It was terrible. And, by the way, Cleveland can run the ball. The Bengals cannot. I made the joke. I'll make it again. This is like changing the toilet at Skyline Chili. Yeah, you've made a change. Maybe it's an upgrade, but at the end of the day, it's still crappy. It's a bad joke. It's a dad joke, and I stand by it. Let's talk to Spencer German about this, our Locked On Browns host. We'll do that next on Locked On Packers. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. So before the trade, the Packers were 14.5-point favorites against the Cincinnati Bengals. Then they traded for Joe Flacco, which has apparently scared some Packer fans. Do you guys want to know what the line is now? It's 14.5. FanDuel does not think there is any difference between Jake Browning and Joe Flacco on short notice. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Joining me now to talk about Joe Flacco for the second time this year. It's not a thing I thought I would say was going to happen. Spencer German from Locked On Browns. And Spencer, this was a pretty surprising move from the Cincinnati Bengals. Not that they traded for a quarterback, but I think that they traded for Joe Flacco. Now, they only really had backup options to trade from, right? Like Russell Wilson has been benched and Joe Flacco has been benched and Kirk Cousins was benched a year ago. But what do you think Joe Flacco changes for Cincy? Like, what does he have left in the tank? What can he do that they need, do you think?
Yeah, it's a veteran guy who can sort of quickly be inserted into an offense and hopefully provide a spark. I think the Bengals are probably hoping that Flacco can do what he did for the Browns 2 years ago in 2023, right? Sort of step in, know how to run an offense efficiently, be very familiar with his terminology and stuff in general because he's seen a bunch of different playbooks and, be able to push the ball downfield and throw it to this really star-studded receiving core that they have. Now the question is, will he have time to do so? We know the Bengals offensive line has been a disaster, maybe arguably worse than the Browns so far this season.
I would say, yeah.
I think the Browns interior offensive line guys have been pretty good. It's the tackles that have been a problem, but for the Bengals, it's kind of like across the board been an issue. And so that kind of remains to be seen. I think the big reason why you saw Flacco get benched in Cleveland was just that he looked like his age was finally catching up with him, is maybe a good way to put it. He wasn't very mobile in the pocket. It's why they made the switch to Dylan Gabriel, because they felt he could just do a little bit more in terms of eluding pressure. And I don't know that Joe Flacco was able to do that. So it feels like for Cincy, sort of this Hail Mary shot in the dark, but I get why they're doing it. Like, if there's a chance that they can sneak into the playoffs in some capacity and then get Joe Burrow back and try to go on a run to the Super Bowl, I get that. We'll see if Joe Flacco has that effect. You know that they must have gotten pretty desperate because this is the first time that the Browns and Bengals have actually completed a trade with each other. There was a trade a couple years ago, maybe more than a couple now, but back in the Hugh Jackson era that was supposed to be at the finish line for A.J. McCarron, where the Browns would have gotten A.J. McCarron, right. And there was an issue with the fax machine, and they didn't send the trade in time, and it didn't happen. So the infamous trade that wasn't. So this is the first time these two teams have actually completed a trade with each other. And so I think that sort of speaks to where they were at in terms of we just need something that we feel is better than what we have right now.
So I understand the theory of like, hey, Joe Flacco, 2023, that guy. That was also the theory in Cleveland for 2025, Spence. Like that was the thought here, and it didn't materialize. You've got Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku, guys who can, threaten the seam in the case of Njoku. Like Cedric Tillman can get downfield, Jerry Jeudy can get downfield, and then this was not an effective vertical passing attack. Why would it be different in Cincinnati other than, I guess, the receivers are just better, which they are, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's what you're banking on, right? Is that you have a better receiving core that will mean you can push the ball a little bit better. We know back in 2023, Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper were like a seamless pair together. I mean, they made some really, really awesome plays together during those 5 games that they were sort of on the field. And so I think they're sort of hoping to replicate something like that. It's an interesting conversation, though. And I'll say this, like from the Cleveland side of things, I think how Joe Flacco performs is going to matter a lot in Cleveland. Like this, in a week where Kevin Stefanski has been the subject of a lot of criticism for especially the way that he sort of coached that game on Sunday against the Vikings, certain key moments of the game where he didn't make decisions that a lot of people agreed with, or he was too conservative, or, didn't use his timeouts correctly, or whatever it might be. If Flacco goes to Cincinnati and he looks better, I think that's even more fire for people, or fuel to the fire for people to talk about, why it might be time for Kevin Stefanski to go. I think that conversation will not go away in any way, shape, or form if Flacco goes to Cincinnati and looks better, whatever the situation may be that necessitates that. Because I think Kevin is very much in the crosshairs right now, and I think it'll be a lot of Browns fans who are looking and saying, well, how did they get more out of Joe Flacco, but you couldn't? And we're stuck here with this offense that hasn't scored 20 points in 10 games. and the Bengals are out here now winning football games and airing it out down the field, which is something the Browns couldn't do. So it's very interesting from, I think, a number of perspectives for both these teams.
This is why I spent the opening block of the show talking about how I don't think that this ultimately moves the needle very much, especially this week for the Bengals. Maybe it does down the line, but I go back and I look at that Browns game. Joe Flacco, 21 of 36 for 142. That's less than 4 yards an attempt with a pick. Now that was an end of half heave. Xavier McKinney makes that play. It didn't ultimately really make that big a deal. And the biggest difference between, say the Lions against the Browns was the interceptions that they got mattered, and the one that the Packers got didn't. I just feel like if that's the version of Joe Flacco that plays this Packers defense, again, I understand Packers fans like Joe Flacco beat the Packers once. That's technically true, Spencer. I look at this and I go, if he plays the same way or the same quality that he did in that week 3 game, the Bengals are going to lose. Like, that's not good enough.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I'd probably just regurgitate a lot of the same talking points that I had back then, especially with you on our crossover episode we did, where I thought the Packers would win too. I thought their offense would do enough against this really good Browns defense, and that the offense for the Browns wouldn't be able to keep up. Somehow, some way, they found a way to win, but we know that game was fluky. It was ugly. It was weird. It took Jordan Love and the Packers maybe being a little bit too aggressive and trying to pick up that first down and throwing the interception instead, and basically handing the offense a touchdown for them to win. It took a blocked field goal for them to win that game. Like, everything had to kind of go right. I do think it's kind of comical, though, that, a couple weeks removed from sort of being haunted by this 40-year-old version of Joe Flacco that clearly isn't the same guy, you get to see him again. And if he somehow pulls off another win, I don't know. There's just something with Joe Flacco and the Packers this year where he'll just be haunting you for the rest of the season.
Spencer, if that happens, it is going to be a tough day of work for me on Monday, because it is going to get ugly in Packerland. I don't think that can happen for Matt LaFleur. I think they need to go out and beat the brakes off the Bengals. Joe Flacco, Jake Browning, I don't think it matters. They have to go and beat the crap out of that team. Because I promise you, me and James are going to have the same conversations on our crossover show that you and I did, where we're laughing about the path to victory for the Browns. Like, yeah, you and I both know this isn't really going to happen, but here's what it looks like. And I'm going to feel weird about it. I'll tell you, because we did it and we were so wrong about it. Like, it really is crazy.
I think the biggest difference probably is, other than the fact that you have more things to worry about with the receivers that the Bengals have, obviously, and maybe that adds some, helps the offense be a little bit better than what the Browns put out there against the Packers a couple weeks ago. But the biggest difference is the Browns defense won them that game. And I don't know that Cincinnati's defense is good enough to do what the Browns did to the Packers in that game. And so that's where I think, we joked about the path to victory, but that is basically what played out in that game. It was the Browns defense basically keeping things as close as possible, getting a couple big plays here or there that flipped the game in their favor, and the offense doing just enough. The offense might be a little bit better for the Bengals because of the weapons that Joe Flacco has, but I still don't know if that's going to be enough given, that their defense is nowhere near as good as the Browns is.
And this is the funny thing about this, right? By far, we went over this in the intro. By far, Joe Flacco's best game this year against the Cincinnati Bengals defense.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, to your point, that is the reason why, if the Packers could easily score 40 in this game, it is hard to imagine the Bengals doing the same, even with what I think is mostly a marginal upgrade at quarterback. Spencer, appreciate your insight, man. I did not think we would be talking again this season. I'm glad we did, because I like talking to you, but this is crazy, and I appreciate the time.
We'll see if Joe Flacco ends up on the Steelers next. I don't know when you guys play them, but we'll see if that happens.
That's a couple weeks, so it'd have to be a pretty quick turnaround here. It's an early glimpse into our crossover Thursday. James Rapien from Locked On Bengals joins me to talk about his perspective on this surprising trade move.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
I had the opportunity to talk to James Rapien for Locked On Sports today about this trade. In the moment, the heat of the trade, reacting to it, trying to understand what exactly is going on here. And so we will have a full crossover show coming up later this week. We will have Lily Zhao coming up at the end of this week. We moved Zhao Yuduin to Friday because this needed to be addressed. I wanted to get the perspective of the league on it, of our network on it. This is why we have the Locked On Podcast Network. It's why it's so valuable to have these other hosts to get their perspective. So let's go to James Rapien's perspective on this trade. The Cincinnati Bengals have made a trade for a quarterback. Joe Flacco is staying in Ohio, going from Cleveland to Cincinnati, staying in the AFC North. James Rapien from Locked On Bengals joins me now. And James, as we sit here recording this, the expectation is that Joe Flacco is on 5 days notice, going to be able to come in and play for the Bengals on Sunday against the Green Bay Packers.
It's wild. It's wild to think of, but that's the position the Bengals are in. They've been outscored 113-37 over the past 3 games with Jake Browning starting.
Is that bad, James?
It's a tad bad. Yeah, it's like the Monstars versus the talentless whoever in Space Jam. But yeah, it's been rough. And so they believe Joe Flacco is going to be able to learn enough and start on the fly. And the good news is he's prepared for this Green Bay Packers team and defense before this season, but it's still a tough ask going into Lambeau 5 days from now.
Why do you think Flacco was the player that they targeted when, maybe there could have been calls to Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins in Atlanta? Like, there were other options out there. Not saying those guys are definitely better. I'm wondering why Flacco is where you think they ultimately landed.
I think Kirk Cousins, it's just his contract, because I do think from a leadership standpoint, he would have fit. I think Russell Wilson, you don't hesitate to say, and I was on the Russell Wilson train. I thought it would have made a lot of sense, but he is cringy, right? He's got some fake leadership to him, and that's not the Bengals telling me that, but I think that everybody can see that. And the Bengals don't want that. They want a real leader, or a guy who's been there, done that, been through the wars. And I do think the other factor here, and it's a very, very big one, they have 2 games in 5 days. They play the Packers at Lambeau and then the Steelers on Thursday Night Football at home. They wanted a guy that could come in and start. And given Flacco and his special, unique set of skills at 40 years old and has been in the league since 2008, I think they think that he'll be not just a leader, but capable of picking up the playbook enough to go there and grasp the game plan and handle business on a short week next week, not just on Sunday at Lambeau. So I think there's a bunch of factors.
So this is a different kind of team than he's had, at least in Cleveland, a team that is got skill talent for days in terms of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Offensive line is a question. I mean, I think if you're going to be excited about Joe Flacco throwing some moonballs to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, the question is going to be, can he protect, or can he be protected long enough to make that work? How much do you think they're going to have to change the offense for his particular set of skills?
I wonder. I wonder how much they'll have to tweak it. I also think over the past couple of weeks, they feel like there was plays out there. And Jamar Chase running free on Monday Night Football against Denver multiple times where Jake Browning just made the wrong decision, made the wrong read. And that's such a factor, because you can deal with an interception here and there, which Joe Flacco is going to throw. You can deal with some splash plays for the defense if you're also getting the explosive plays on offense. But this offense wasn't generating explosive plays. They went 19 straight possessions without scoring a touchdown. It cannot happen.
Yeah, that's
and should not happen. All 4 of the touchdowns they scored in the Jake Browning starting era were when it was garbage time in the second half, when the game was well in hand and over for the other team. So yeah, I think those are some of the factors. How the offense is going to look, maybe it is moon balls and dump offs. And I would understand that strategy, but those moon balls, you're right, are going to have to be Joe Burrow rookie-esque, where he's hitting his back foot and he's launching that thing ahead of time, because this offensive line hasn't held up great, but they also aren't much different than what Joe Flacco was dealing with in Cleveland from a pass protection standpoint. So maybe they have that going for them.
The difference is, at least once Quinshon Judkins got into town, the Browns started to be able to run the ball. This is a running game with Chase Brown that has really not gotten off the tracks here yet. That would be a big boost to Joe Flacco, but it would have been a big boost to Jake Browning too.
It would have, no doubt. And I wonder where they're at running game wise, if they just feel like, hey, at least this guy can throw it. If we can't run it, we got to find someone else that can throw it.
Let's just let 41-year-old Joe Flacco throw it 50 times. Let's go.
Hey, he's not the Joe that we know, right? Is in Joe Burrow, but he's still a Joe. Maybe that's the logic, because he still does have that arm talent and that strong arm. And I think that's what the Bengals saw, is a pick swap. They're not giving up a ton. It's a manageable contract, unlike Kirk Cousins. And so let's go get a guy that can come in and maybe keep them afloat here as they try to navigate the waters without Joe Burrow.
Well, and if you to your point on Jamar Chase running open and Jake Browning misses the read, if you're Joe Flacco, is going to be throw it to one, because that's just like, sometimes that's all you need. And if you're Joe Flacco, you've got enough equity to just say, hey, I know what the play is designed to do here, but let me just see if I can get this ball to Jamar Chase.
And that can work. Joe Burrow does that. Jamar's down there somewhere. That's a famous quote here in Cincinnati that he said years ago. And Joe Flacco, I'm sure he's excited to work with these weapons here in Cincinnati.
All right. Thanks to James and Spencer for coming on and offering their insight into all of this. Did not think I would be talking to Spencer again. Did not think I'd be talking to James twice this week by any means, but I think those conversations were useful. I had a blast talking to those guys. And so I'm glad we were able to get that in. Back to, our regularly scheduled programming moving forward. We will have a full crossover Thursday episode coming your way. We will have Lily's out on Friday, as I mentioned, and our squad show is coming. TBD on the timing of that. Keep an eye out on my social medias. With the Brewer game, there might be 2 Brewer games, and so that makes it problematic. We are likely just going to push the squad show back from a timing perspective on Wednesday and try and figure out what makes sense there. Probably 8 or 8:15 Central Time instead of 7. But we'll keep an eye out on my socials for that. We'll put that out when we can get to it. If you're subscribed to Locked On Packers, you're not going to miss it anyway. And of course, we'll be live after the game as always, so you can stay Locked On Packers.